Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Reed, and I traveled in Up With People 1976, and then did costumes for a few of you for a few years, served on the Board of Governors, a few other things. And if you've watched any of the Cactus Lounge interviews, you already know that. So today, my guest is Leif Bristow. Welcome, Leif.
Hi, it's nice to be here, Donna.
So I don't know anything about him, except that I think he works in film and helps on movies or something. So it's always fun for me when I get to talk to someone who I really don't know much about. So Leif, why don't you start by telling everyone how you first learned about Up With People? I used to say, where'd you see a show? But not everybody saw a show. So how did you learn about Up With People, and when did you travel? Things like that.
Well, in fact, I had seen an Up With People show when I was in high school many, many moons ago. And then in 1973, Up With People was in Edmonton, which is where I was living at the time. I went to the University of Denver, but then transferred back. I was born in Canada, raised in the US, and then transferred back to university in Edmonton. And my father's company was involved in sponsoring the Up With People concert in Edmonton in 1973. So we had a couple people stay at the house, and then I went to the show. And at the time, I was kind of in a double major between opera and medicine, trying to decide whether to be
two exactly alike.
Well, when you think of being an adolescent and child psychiatrist, or being a singer and performing for 2 hours, you're giving somebody maybe a relief from the rest of the world for that 2 hours. You just don't get to charge the same billable hourly rate.
That would be true.
Yeah. So I was trying to decide what to do, and I was as I was finishing the year, and a couple of people that were staying with us said, "Oh, you should interview," and I loved the show, so I thought, yeah, why not? So I did interview and got accepted, and it was really very fascinating for me at that time, because I went with cast 74A, and as you know, our cast staged their show in Spa, Belgium.
Oh, fun. No, I didn't, because everybody staged all over.
And I had I think that was the very first time that Up With People had staged a show in Europe. So yeah, we staged our show in Spa, Belgium, and it was fun, because I remember I actually spoke to Herbie Allen that summer before going, and he said, yeah, you really need to come, because I was and I was trying to figure out where my life was going, whether I was going to do opera, whether I was not going to do opera, and Up With People really helped me figure a lot of that out, actually. Because at the time, my job was to go and win competitions, and I'd been offered a position at La Scala and the Met, and I just couldn't decide whether it was something I really wanted to do with my life.
Leif, let me interrupt real quick here. How old were you at this point? Were you like 22, 20?
20.
20. Okay.
Yeah, I turned 21 just before leaving.
Okay.
To go to Brussels.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a really fascinating time. It was really exciting, staging the show in Spa. The first host family I stayed in the barracks for a little while, and the first host family I stayed with there, the Von Zerlin family, and I've gone back. I almost used their house for a film not too long ago, but they were. Maria von Trapp left, staying with them the week before I got there, because Maria von Trapp, Baroness von Zerlin, that was her closest friend.
My gosh.
So I just missed getting to meet Maria von Trapp by a week. But I had a beautiful bedroom, let's put it that way. It was stunning. I couldn't complain about that. So yeah, and yeah, so yeah,
Interesting.
pretty
Ca-
incredible.
Did you, by any chance, do you ever remember the name Stroye? Struye? Pierre Paul. Okay.
No.
The Stroye family was very involved in the Belgian community and world. And so you were in 74, and I think their eldest son traveled in 75, and then their daughter traveled with me in 76, and then another daughter
Okay.
traveled later.
Oh,
And
wow.
and they are that family, my girlfriend is probably the one that I have visited the most in Europe. You know, if I'm there, I try to get to Belgium, you know, to Brussels.
Uh, well, you know what? It's really interesting how places form impressions in our mind. I mean, I was fortunate growing up. We moved around a lot. We travel around a lot because I lived in Alaska, Denver, Dallas, Chicago,
Yeah,
um, Los Angeles. So there was a lot. But um, go flying to Brussels was my very first trip abroad,
I
and
was
of
going
course,
to ask.
I'm on my
Yeah,
own. So you know, there you are. I didn't do the backpacking around Europe thing. So you know, we land in Brussels, and it was just so magical. And then driving from there to Spa, it was always very magical to me. I fell in love with obviously Belgian chocolates, like everybody else in the cast,
everybody does. Yeah.
and and wardrobe kept telling everybody how to stop falling in love with Belgian chocolates and fries. Um, one too many
Of
fruits and
course.
one too many chocolates. So, yeah, there were a few people that were, guys, you gotta pull back a little. Um, uh, so I actually, because of that Belgian chocolate and a Belgian chocolate company here in Toronto, I actually did the first ever English language romance movie about the chocolate industry a number of years ago called Love, Romance, and Chocolate, which we did for the Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, yeah. I've watched several of your shows, so we'll get yeah,
So
more of that.
we filmed that one in Brussels and Bruges,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's that and a couple of other of our films are ranked among the most ever watched Hallmark movies in history, and
Oh,
they play all the
that
time, as you know. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. I go from something like Breaking Bad, which goes and then I go like, no, 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 I need to watch a Hallmark movie because
a
I
lot of
know how
people in
they're
that,
gonna end.
an awful lot of people in that world.
Happily ever after. You know, we need that.
Yeah,
Even in the made up cities and countries that there are.
yeah, and we try not to do that. I mean, that's kind of where we tried to set a different standard for Hallmark.
Yeah, yeah.
Wherever possible, I play the country we're filming in as the country it is, so that
That's
I can
nice.
showcase the postcards of those countries to send them back to a lot of people who may never get the experience that we had when we were up with people.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. All right. So when you joined, because you then had been in opera, were you a singer when you traveled? Did you,
Yes.
were
Yeah.
you? Okay. Okay. And what, just, I'm trying to think of, you know, when I traveled, it was 76. So they had jumped into this centennial thing in 75, 76. What were some of the songs in your show, Leaf, that,
Well, obviously, roads,
mhm.
uh, 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 the old man and the boy,
Oh, that's, there goes
Hello.
an old
Uh,
man. That one.
yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. Tuna used to sing that. Tony Flores used to sing that one all the time. Um, uh,
I love that you called him that. That's
And
awesome.
I will tell you a very memorable experience that Tune and I had that was pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
Separate from all the other amazing experiences we had. But we, yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, just
Okay.
thinking like, wow.
Yeah, it's a flashback, isn't it, to go back 50 years and be like, what did I sing
Yeah, it sure is.
in that
It really
show?
is.
All right. So and because I did costumes for a few years, and we were in double knit. Were yours like double knit too? Were you in like that rust color and orangey
We
yellow?
had we had the kind of the I don't know what color you want to call it, somewhere between yellow and gold, the big puffy
Yes.
sleeves
Puffy sleeves,
yes, and the big wide collars
collars.
and the brown and white diamond sweaters for the guys.
Yes, the
And
sweaters. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
yeah, sleeveless sweaters. And then, yeah, and then we were in kind of in the tangerine and turquoise or
Okay,
aquamarine dresses.
right. And then we went to orange and yellow and green, 75, 76. So there was a number of years where those were kind of our colors. So anyway, all right. So did you travel more than 1 year on the road?
No, I'm actually one of those oddballs that everybody couldn't figure out what the heck happened to him. And I got, well, a couple of things happened. It wasn't any one thing. By the end of, by the time we had traveled into December, because we started our show.
Probably in July.
We staged our show in July and we started it, I believe it was in August,
Yeah.
in Belgium, because we did a lot of performances for Princess Paola was sponsoring these concerts around the country to raise money
Yeah.
for crippled children and things like that. And so we did a number of those concerts for her. I actually got to meet the who is now the king, but the prince when he was 12, in Brussels. And it's after that, when his sister moved to, or his aunt moved to Toronto, I actually went out with her a couple of times. And then and when I went back to make the movies in Bruges and
Brussels.
last couple of movies that we've done in Belgium,
Yeah.
one of there what actually in Love, Romance, and Chocolate, you saw this beautiful palace in the movie
Yeah.
where they were making the chocolate and where the ball was. So that palace is the largest privately owned castle in Belgium.
Oh,
And who owns it is very close to the king. And he happened to be at the same concert. And so he and I started talking about it and he remembered. And that was the reason we got to use that palace in our movie.
wow. Isn't that a great like connections story?
And I've used it again when we did, I don't know if you saw Jolly Good Christmas. It's one that we did, but
I've
that
seen
one
most of
is
them.
also,
So
we used the exact same palace.
that's
We don't
fascinating.
fall through the palace. So
Yeah. Yeah. You'll when you get a chance, if you get a chance in your busy life to listen to some of these, interviewing some of the people who have who traveled in different years, who have wound up either in film or TV or whatever. And there's one guy, and I can't, John Fidinich is his name, and I probably mutilated his last name, but he started out and he was he secured sites, for filming. And then he has been, I believe, and I'm going to say producer, not exactly sure if those are the right words or if it's director, but I think producer for the show about oh my gosh, Netflix, French chef whose name, it's awful that my brain doesn't remember names. Anyway, the progression of life, through
yes.
doing it and how he's created. So
So
after
yeah, well, you were asking how long I traveled. So what happened was, by the time we
sorry.
reached December, when we were in Milan, because we'd been
Right.
traveling, I ended up
Okay.
getting bronchitis from saying, but when we were in Milan, I had the opportunity to then go and visit with the director at La Scala. And when I was standing there and they were saying, yeah, and if you go to school, here's what you need to do, or if you come to if you come to La Scala and begin to work, here would be what you need to know and everything else. And I was trying to evaluate because the Met had made some suggestions based on if I worked at La Scala and then came to the Met. And so when I was standing there, I realized, standing up there on the top balcony, that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing opera. That
I was going to ask when that.
I wanted to entertain the mass, not the few. And at that time, you figure, and when we were in Ancona, Italy, before we went to Perugia, the house I was staying in was directly across the street from Luciano Pavarotti's parents' home. And Luciano Pavarotti had just been there and just left. So it's like, I kept missing everybody. So
We were this close, right? That we were this
that
close.
close, that close. So we, once I realized that, I realized what I needed to do for my life. So I came home for Christmas and made the decision. I knew where we were going to be traveling next, and I decided not to go back because
Oh,
I decided that, not that I didn't love every minute, but that what I needed to gain,
you had.
I got.
Mm.
And because it really helped give me a direction for what I needed to do. So instead, I decided if I was not going to go into opera, and I was not going to go back and become a psychiatrist, and I was going to stay in media or entertainment, I wanted to go back and get my degree in theater because I knew exactly where I stood in the world as a singer. So
Ah,
I knew that if I was going to really do this, my ability to act needed to be commensurate with what I knew I could do as a singer. So I auditioned for different schools around the world, everything from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I was accepted to every one of them, and ultimately decided to go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts
New York
in
City.
California. And I did it
Oh,
very
California. Okay.
Yeah, when I started there, I was it started 1 year before. I was going to go to New York, but the people I wanted to work with specifically from the Academy had all moved to
Oh,
California.
that's interesting. Okay.
So I went there, and the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, where the Oscars was held, and now America's Got Talent is there every week. That was our campus, is when I
Mm.
started there. And we had a lot of amazing people in that school. So I knew that when I came back, I auditioned for everything, got accepted to that, and then just knew I needed to save my money and plan everything about starting there in the summer. So my whole focus changed to doing that. And then
Interesting.
I spent 3 years, getting my degree in theater, and then worked all the time, stayed in California for a few years, and then moved back to Canada.
So my eldest went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, but that's a whole nother story that doesn't need to be here. And it's just, yeah, so that's why my brain went right to New York. So when did you decide, learn, change, morph into, because I hear theater, and just like a doctor, I always ask a doctor, how did you decide that you were going to be a vascular surgeon or an orthopedic surgeon or whatever? How did you decide that you were going to be behind the cameras, Leif, and doing that side of things?
Well, I mean, I was really, really fortunate. I worked nonstop as an actor when I graduated. I was in that fortunate few that could say I could make a living and buy a house as a performer.
Nice. Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was offered a lead in a new Mary Tyler Moore TV series, but that year, it was a sitcom. I was going to be the new kind of
Dick Van
uh,
Dyke.
uh, Vinnie Barbarino.
Vinnie Barbarino. Huh. Okay.
I was going to basically be that type of a character in a new sitcom. And that year was the year that all of a sudden there was this new announcement for this new show called Knight Rider, and then Magnum PI. And then all of a sudden, every network canceled all the sitcoms that they were doing.
Oh, and they went to those.
Because they all had to compete with each other. Because remember, we didn't have 500 channels.
No. Right.
We had NBC, CBS, and ABC. And if
Right.
you weren't on one of those three channels, you didn't have a career.
Right.
So all three networks were scrambling to see who could come up with the best comedic detective shows. Murder, She Wrote, Barney, whatever, MD with
Barney Miller.
Buddy. That was Buddy Ebsen. So and then there was Barney Miller. There was just all these shows. So
Right.
my show got canceled. And with that, I thought, living in California, it takes as much luck, and probably way more luck than skill,
Yeah.
to ever get recognized in LA.
Right.
And look at the volume of people you're competing against. So often the people that become stars in LA are somebody who just worked a bit in Australia, and then all of a sudden an agent there knows an agent in LA, and they take them
Yeah.
on and put them into the studio. So they bypass everybody.
Yeah.
you know, it's a lot of times it's like everything else in life. If you're from someplace, it's harder to become recognized in that place than if you go away and then people recognize, then you go home. So at that time, there was no theater in LA. There still is. There's no theater in LA. LA is a city that you either pay to perform or you join an amateur company, and casting directors in LA wouldn't dream of leaving their office to ever go scout new talent. It's not like being
Wow.
in New York or being in London
Where you go to shows and yeah,
every agent, every casting agent goes to theater all the time.
right.
Uh, LA, it's like if you don't show up in their office, they can't think about it. So I decided that I was trying to decide whether to go to New York and work on Broadway or move back to Canada at a time when the um, the Canadian the Canadian industry was really starting to grow.
Okay.
So I decided to come back. I worked here for a number of years, nonstop. And then when the economy's changed, and you know, anybody that's tried to work in media, I don't care whether it's singing, writing, acting, and any of the creative arts, we all know that there's, you know, for most people, you're always dependent upon either getting grants or people funding something or this or that. So it's very volatile. Because when the economy changed, I thought, you know, I'm going to take a bit of a break because I had performed Lancelot way too many times. There was almost no role left in musical theater that I wanted to do because I had done them all. So, you know, it's like after you've done 250 performances of Captain Von Trapp, or you've done, you know, it's just
Yeah.
like,
That's enough. Yeah.
it's great, but what's the next chapter?
Right.
So I decided to take time off. And crazy enough, go into finance because everybody in my family is in investment banking except me. So I knew that I grew up in that. So for me, it was osmosis. So I said, no, I'm going to go out and learn. I want to understand how to finance what I want to accomplish with my dreams.
There you go.
I joined forces with a few people and we opened a merchant bank and we financed everything from hovercrafts to pharmaceuticals to diamond mines to healthcare products. So with that, I learned how to finance media. So then I said, well, so now if I want to finance a play, I'll just finance the play. And then the opportunity came, and I at some point there was a company that had made a film called Beethoven Lives Upstairs, which won the Emmy in 1993 as Best Family Movie. And they didn't really know anything about finance. Somebody had given them the money because they needed a tax write-off, but they wanted to make more movies. So I agreed to finance that company, and we ended up doing 18 films for HBO on composers, inventors, and artists. Like we discovered the diary of an 11-year-old girl studying piano with Bizet when he wrote Carmen. So we told her story. And we filmed them all in Slovakia and Ireland and other places in Europe. And we used the Slovak Philharmonic to record all of our albums. And so out of that, and then when our youngest was born, I really kind of came to the decision I didn't want my family to be stage widows. You know, my wife and I produce all the films that we do together. So
Yep.
we're among the very blessed in our industry that we get to travel the world together and be on set together, unlike
Right.
somebody who have to leave their families behind.
Yep.
I just decided, is my career about me, or is it, do I want my family included in it? And my wife and I love spending time together. So, you know, she's the best partner I could have. I didn't want to leave her home wondering what I was doing on stage. So, and that's, you know, just much more vulnerable. So I decided I would go back into directing and executive producing. Every once in a while, you'll see my face in front of the camera, but I'd go there if I choose to, or sometimes I'm just the voice of a reindeer. And like when we did our movie Blizzard, you know, I just do the voice of the reindeer, you know. So I turn it into fun.
Awesome.
So now I have a career where I direct and I executive produce all the time.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I think that, well, clearly life is an evolution. When I meet someone who knew when they were 16 that they wanted to be a nurse, and then they were a nurse and now they're retired and they've been a nurse, I'm like, who are you people that just knew that's what you wanted? Because that's so not the world I live in. I mean, I'm still thinking about it, whatever it is, you know.
Yes, I
And
agree.
and I also, through doing these interviews, have listened to those creative types. So I told you a little bit before we logged on about why I started this, and we give away Everyday Hero Awards at Reunion. And the Everyday Hero Awards had been related to people who knew stories of Up With People alumni and what they did. And I felt like there was a lot of everyday heroes in our world who none of us knew about. One of them, a Canadian guy, one of the interviews, has donated over 1,000 pints of blood. 1,000. 1,000. So that's not building a school in Africa. That's not, but 1,000 pints of blood, right? That's an everyday hero to me, right? That's,
Oh, yeah.
and I feel like the stories that I learn from people, I just interviewed 3 guys who they played together in 77. They're still recording together. They're just reproducing a song that they wrote on the road in 77.
That's wonderful.
I love that. And I think that that's part of who you are or who you were or who you became in Up With People, that you have these connections. You've talked about connections, right? That, this person here, and what led you and guided you early on to make some of the decisions, that you've made. So, what do you have coming up?
Well, last year was a really busy year. We did a film called Dancing Detectives in Malta with Lacey Chabert and Will Kemp.
I saw that.
and
I
then-
do watch and follow you online, so I see what you're doing. Yeah.
and then we went to South Africa and I directed Safari Romance, which stars
That
my
was a
daughter.
great, that your daughter was in that one. Yep. That
Yeah,
was fun.
and Andrew Walker. And then we went to Hungary and did a golf movie, Love on the Right Course, that Brittany actually wrote with her husband. And then we just finished, which actually I'm just finishing the mix on it now. Aggie and I, a few years ago, had an idea of, what if we did something like a modern day version of The Love Boat? But instead of a ship, what we did was we went and we chartered one of those great big river cruise ships that goes through on the Rhine and the Danube.
What company did you use?
We used Scenic. So we used the Emerald Luna as our ship.
Okay.
And we chartered the whole ship, and we went from Regensburg, Germany to Budapest, and we filmed in all the ports along the way.
Okay.
So we did 3 movies, and we'll see 3 different couples falling in love on a river cruise romance movie. When Hallmark relaunches their major and re-announces their SVOD channel in September, it'll be the major franchise to launch the channel. So we've just done that. We're about to start a Christmas movie. We've got a couple of TV series that we've been asked to look at. There's a new TV series that will be airing. It aired in Canada last night, but it'll be airing on Amazon Prime and Freevee in the US in September, called Beyond Black Beauty. It's a horse movie, or a horse TV series.
Okay.
And
Wow.
we've got, I don't know, we have 11 movies to do. I was at Sedona, as you saw.
Yes, you were in Sedona. Yeah.
Dancing Through the Shadow, which is the movie that based on the book that my wife wrote about a woman who was the prima ballerina in Beijing when Mao was in power. And
Wow.
her son was taken away from her when he was 56 days old. And when Madame Mao thought that ballerinas needed to understand what was hard work like the peasants did, so she closed all the dance schools and sent them all to labor camps. So she only saw her son a couple times in 3 years. So we did a movie about her life, and that should be coming out through MGM next year. We'll be releasing it in a small theatrical release over the next few months. And then we've got a couple more projects to do and a whole bunch more Hallmark movies and things.
I got to try to get my son to submit for Hallmark. It's funny. His birthday's today. Happy birthday, Caleb. If you watch this, he's 37. And
Happy birthday.
Last night he got together with several alumni in Denver, and they all dressed up as a form of him. And so his brother, my other son, wore a t-shirt that showed the shows that he's either been in or knows really well. So it said, Les Mis and Wedding Singer and stuff, because he's kind of the Adam Sandler kind of guy.
Okay.
Compared to the Jean Valjeans. That's what I always, those are my two comparisons.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he just did School of Rock. But I've told him, I go, you know, if you want to venture out and you want to do something different. So anyway, it's
You know what? There's a lot of people that love it, and it's just and that, you know, that's, I think that's, you know what, you know, one of the things that I would say, you know, that Up With People really helped informed in how I create content, or Aggie and I create the content that we do now, is from growing up and having moved to a lot of different schools and different things, but then traveling and Up With People. One of the things that was so evident to me was that no matter where I've traveled in the world, no matter what families I've stayed with, there's, as a global community, well, and I think this is one of the reasons that Up With People is so important as a positive reminder and affirmation of that, is that no matter where you go in the world, I've never, you know, people, we all share something very similar. That is, you know, people they love to laugh, they love to sing, they love to smile. No parent wants to see their child die before them, and especially not in a war or anything else. And when we can use music and laughter and share stories, we immediately become connected.
absolutely.
And it, you know, I've always hated the word tolerance. I think it is an abused and a divisive word. I don't believe it's a good word at all. You know, tolerance is something you do when there's somebody you have to put up with.
Right.
Acceptance is very different. We can only learn to accept and appreciate each other if we're willing to open the door and explore those cultures. You know, and so for the younger, you know, members of Up With People that get the opportunity to travel and venture into these new cultures, they're getting a window and an opportunity to accept others and to be accepted just by telling their stories and interacting and using the music and
Yeah.
laughter to discover that. So, you know, it doesn't, you know, frankly, you know, whatever, understanding the differences in those cultures and embracing them, that's what then allowed me to, when I decided I wanted to make films, one of the things that I did, because I have daughters, was I said, okay, the thing that's going to be the signature to what I do in my career is that I don't do anything with gratuitous sex or violence. I do stories predominantly about young women rising above adversities, because I felt
Mm.
role models for young women in film and television. So it's kind of been, that's been the signature. If you go through over 50
Yep.
movies and what else that's there, that's the signature to what I do. And everything is grounded based on the female protagonists in my stories.
That's
Um,
super. You know, Leif, you're literally, you've answered what I often ask at the end of these, is about what Up With People has done for you and why you might encourage another young person to participate in this. So you preemptively answered what, no, it's great. What I would ask, because when I have people say to me that, it doesn't, I don't have to go there. I've read about it. And I'm like, oh, there's nothing that can compare to going and living and in Up With People. We lived in their
yeah,
homes. We didn't just stop at a hotel and go see the #1 tourist attraction, right?
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And you know, and I remember staying when we were in, you know, clearly in Spa. I was staying with one of the wealthiest families in all of Belgium
Yep.
for part of my stay. Then I stayed with another very wonderful family that wasn't that. And then when I went to Bournemouth, I stayed with a family that was so wonderful. They didn't even have hot running water in their home.
Wow.
So, but they gave what they could.
Right.
So, you know, you can't measure it based on wealth or not wealth. You have to measure it based on what they're giving from their heart.
I agree.
You
I
know,
agree.
I met one, you know, I had so many memorable families. Tuna and I, if you're ever talking to Tuna, ask him about Jan, Gigi, and Mimi, the young family with their 3-year-old that we were staying with in Ostend. Because when we
Okay.
went
Yeah, I may
Gigi,
have to, we're almost done, so I have to wrap this up, but
okay,
I just wrote that down with my other notes about you because I feel like that's the Paul Harvey, the rest of the
yeah,
story.
he'll he'll get flustered. I guarantee you.
Getting getting flustered is all good. So
But yeah,
yeah.
so no, I was going to tell you a great story about Tuna and I that was one of the most memorable goofy experiences I had, because every day was a memorable experience.
Yeah.
But when we went to Belfast, we were singing in Belfast when the night before we arrived,
Yeah.
a car dealership got blown up, and it was on the
Wow.
second floor of a building. So they had to blow up the whole building to get to the dealership. And it was right across the street from our theater. So because of that, everybody had to call their parents to make sure everybody was comfortable that we could even go to Belfast. And then we stayed at the university. And never forget, because we get on the bus in the morning, two things happen. We get on the bus to go to the theater, and Wilfred Jeevers, who I love to death, he's one of my favorite people on the planet. Wilfred gets on the bus, and the first thing he does, he goes, "Attention, I've lost my shoes, but my name's mentioned in the lining. Has anyone seen them?" I thought I was going to die right then and there. So, and
We
so
got like 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay, so we get to the theater that night and we're performing, and in the middle of the show, Tuna and I said, "It's so hot, let's step out back." We step out back of the theater, and all of a sudden, there's a Jeep pulls up with a machine gun and it's pointing straight at us and said, "What are you doing out here?" We said, "We're performing in there and we thought we'd take a break." And they said, "You might want to just go back inside." Ask Tuna how he responded, but we went back in really quick.
Oh my gosh. I thought you
And
were
the
going to
next and
say
the
like,
next day was when the famous movie In the Name of the Father, that was the
yeah.
day of the breakout. So for our bus to get out of town took for ever.
Wow. Wow. Oh yeah. I'll have to message. He was like a dance captain or something in 76. I can't remember exactly, what he was doing, but that's awesome. Leif, thank you so much for your time. And I will let you know. I kind of release these every couple of weeks if I can.
Okay.
I took a big pause during Christmas and stuff, but you have to go to the Cactus Lounge on YouTube
Yeah,
and
now that I know about
listen to
it,
me. You have to, you must.
I will. I will for sure. I will for sure.
And stuff, and it's wonderful hearing your story because you are one of the people that either through the alumni page, or I think I sent you a friend request, I follow where you are and what you're doing, and it's
Thank you.
fascinating. I love that you go and you do, and that you work with your wife and you incorporate your daughters and everything like that. That's just and I like that it's wholesome in many ways. It's good. It's not, like you said, not all the gratuitous stuff that
It's
I
a it's a
tire of.
wonderful break. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
break from everything else.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. All right. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much. You have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of the day and I'll keep
You too.
watching. Okay.
Okay. You take
All
care.
right.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.